welcome to our Albuquerque studios. Happy Seating and Selection Bracket Breakdown Sunday. I'm Sebastian Noel with Aaron Rivera. It must be early in the morning because, man, are your eyes bloodshot.
It's too early in the morning, but you know what? We're going to find out who is going where and who's in the playoffs today, so it's all worth it to me.
If you're having a viewing party in the morning, and we know you're probably not, but if you are, send us some pictures at ProView TV. We do have the very first team lined up, I think. Our director, Jason Pohl, has that for us. Welcome to the program, the Grants Pirates. You are the very first. They are waiting on their order of pancakes and their bracket. We'll get to all that in just a moment. Let's take a look at the criteria, often criticized, never quite understood. The seeding and selection criteria. Finish in regular season district play. So, you know, Clovis Wildcats come to mind right there. Congratulations to Clovis, the district champs. Max Preps rankings. We'll have some thoughts about those.
Yep.
Overall record, wins against district champions, regardless of classification. Member school input, which is an end-of-the-year coaches poll, and then head-to-head matchups.
It's impossible, Sebastian. I don't understand any of those criteria. How can you put together what any of those mean? It's just impossible.
Right. So the NMA not involved in seeding or selecting any of the teams. It's pretty cut and dry. Really, the only thing we don't really get to take a look at is that coaches poll at the end of the year. But everything else, you can kind of, you can get out a napkin at home and figure it all out yourself if you want. It is that simple. Obviously, the one that comes into play pretty good this year, especially in that 6A bracket, Aaron, is the finish in regular season district play. We saw the Wildcats last game of the season at Leon Williams Stadium wrap up their district against Los Lunas. And what does that mean? Well, what it means is that Los Lunas cannot be seated ahead of Clovis. Clovis obviously did not have the greatest of seasons prior to that magical night at Leon Williams Stadium. As a matter of fact, 5-5 record. So?
Yeah, but it's not about how the entire season goes. We have districts for a reason, and it's so that, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, you play in your district, you're planning to win the district because you know that if you can win that, then you're in. And after that, we've seen last year in soccer, the lowest seed in boys soccer won the whole tournament. You can, as long as you're in, you can actually advance along and win the thing. So good ups on Clovis. They came out, doesn't matter how the rest of the season goes, they go 1-5 against non-district opponents, but they go 4-0 in district. And so you can sit there and say, oh, well, they're not the best team in their district. Well, they went 4-0 in district.
Right. The last point about that, though, is wherever the criteria ends up slotting Clovis, Los Lunas is going to have to be right behind them.
Yeah. So
the question then becomes, does that cluster of two teams slot in right above that West Mesa kind of mess at 10 and 11? Or do they slot in at 11 and 12? Well, we're going to find that out. And there's obviously some other scenarios where some of those criteria played into things pretty heavily. You take a look at overall record. Sandia has a fantastic 8-2 overall record.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you right now, I'm not going to reel any names, but from some coaches I've been talking to, there's some teams that would not mind seeing Sandia as their first opponent.
Yeah, they're 8-2, but they also didn't play the most difficult schedule of everybody. Obviously, once they hit district, that becomes a little bit more difficult for them. But you look at, they beat Farmington, who's going to be on the lower end of that seeding. They beat Atrisco, who's going to be out. They beat Cibola at the end of the season. So, right there, that's 3 wins of teams that are on the lower end or not in the playoffs at all.
We do have some number 1 seeds already announced. We'll get to those on the other side of this break. Again, if you're having a breakfast watch party, send us those pictures at ProView TV, and we'll be sure to get those up and give you guys a shout out. Back with some brackets and number 1 seeds when we get back.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number 1. Cover it with green stuff, 1 scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Networks. Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
These are more than just the sounds of a safe place to go after school. These are the sounds of interest being ignited and of mentors making an impact. At Boys and Girls Clubs, we don't do just one thing. We do whatever it takes to meet the needs of every kid who comes through those doors. Because whatever it takes is what it takes to build great futures. Great futures start here.
Rudy's is a proud supporter of ProView Networks. TurboThreads is a proud sponsor of ProView Networks.
Almost 30 years of experience means fast service, great prices, and a wide selection.
Welcome
of
back.
from t-shirts
Good morning to the Volcano Vista Hawks. They're watching, awaiting their seed. I think there's more than 18 guys on the team, though. Look at that.
I don't know.
They look tired. Look at the A train in the front. He's like, man, this train don't run. This train don't run Sunday at 7:15 in the morning, right? So that's a team that, conversely, we talked about Sandia, but that's a team I think no matter what numbers in front of them, that's who you don't want to run into in the first round.
No, you don't want Volcano, and they're a team that consistently will get themselves to the semifinals, and for good reason. I mean, they play tough teams all year long. Like you said, conversely to Sandia, Volcano's schedule is always stacked. I mean, they played against La Cueva. They played against Cleveland. They had a tough run against Rio Rancho. So that's definitely a team, and the man up front is a man I don't want to be running into anytime soon because he'll knock you down.
And then his 8th grade brother could probably kill you with a tackle.
I've seen some of those hits that he puts down, and I'm like, my goodness.
But the coaches I talked to, they did say, hey, it's not about the number of the seed this year. It really is about the matchup. And consistently, it came up, hey, if you can avoid Volcano in the first round, you take your chances with almost anyone else that has to play on the first weekend. All right, we do have some brackets ready to go. Exciting time. Our director, Jason Pohl, will throw up the first. I believe it is the 2A bracket, so no surprise at the top there. Congratulations to the number 1 seed, the Eunice Cardinals. They'll face Escalante in the opening round, their quarterfinals. Tularosa and JAL is the 5-4, sets up an interesting matchup between the rivals, JAL and Eunice, in the semis. Get your T-shirts ready for that one. Santa Rosa and Loving, the 3-6 matchup there at the bottom. And then the number 2 seed, Texaco, against the number 7, Estancia. Could set up a very, very traditional championship between Texaco and Eunice. But can anyone give those top 2 seeds a problem?
I mean, the big question is that JAL-Eunice. Obviously, Eunice beat JAL pretty handily in their first matchup, but Eunice also handled Texaco pretty handily in their first matchup. So it's the real question is, can anybody stop the Cardinals? But if anybody can, it would be their rivals from just down the road. JAL, I think, is that team that you look at and you say, okay, yeah, we lost the first one, but boys, you saw what they put up. You know how these two schools feel about each other. Don't let us down. Let's take on the Cardinals this time. So JAL's the only team I really look at that I think could shut down that number 1 seed, the Eunice Cardinals.
I do think this is a very interesting bracket. There's a lot of parity in this bracket. I don't think anyone would be surprised if Santa Rosa was lifting the trophy at the end of the season. I mean, they had a 9-1 record. They just outscored everybody. Their defense very stingy. So I think you can make a case for even all the way to 5 there for a championship appearance, right? Obviously, for Tularosa, that would be tough to have to navigate through JAL and then Eunice. But I think you could make a case that this is one of the more even brackets we've seen in a while.
Well, 2A tends to be that way. I mean, these schools really compete together at the same. I mean, across sports, you see a lot of the same athletes on all of these teams across sports, and so they play against each other a lot. But I don't know the way you've seen the ending results for the Cardinals. I mean, they beat all comers in this level.
And I can tell you from personal experience, there's nothing like a championship Saturday at Cardinal Stadium there in Eunice. You know, the town closed down. The parade starts early. They parade them from wherever in town into the stadium. It's a pretty cool vibe. And I know Texaco is a traditional rival there. So
yeah, but I mean, back to your point about that Santa Rosa situation. Santa Rosa is one of the only teams to play pretty closely with Eunice. So,
right.
Like you say, it's not surprising. It would be a lot of fun, though, for the folks down in the Southeast. I mean, last year, Texaco hosts the game. Jal beats them in the championships in Texaco, and I think that it's most likely that trophy is somewhere headed back southeast again, or at the very least, somewhere east.
Can we? Should we do a selection here? What do you like, Aaron? What do you like in the championship?
I think I've made that clear. I like the Eunice Cardinals, and I have to stick with Texaco. The Wolverines are really good. I don't think the Wolverines necessarily can win that one. They've already played this year, and in that game, Eunice beat them 21-14. But, you know, that's one score rematch. Maybe the Wolverines can get something better and actually lift the trophy this year.
Yeah, I like the number 1 seed Eunice there as well, and I do have them going against Texaco, so I'll take the 1 seed Eunice as well. That's the 2A bracket. Congratulations to those teams. Remember to log on to nmact.org for scheduling information as well. And as these brackets get released, you can go to that website, and times for first round matchups will start to be populated in by schools and athletic directors as well. So
I can't wait to find all that information out. What are we doing on Friday? What are we doing on Saturday? That's, I mean, the exciting part about this time of year is that you get great matchups Friday and Saturday. You no longer have that situation where, this district game might not be necessarily fun. It's all fun because we're into the playoffs now. We're into the part of the season where everybody's got something on the line. You can't afford to lose a game, take a game off. And, I mean, any team that can't compete is likely out of the field already at this point.
Absolutely. All right, let's move ahead to our next bracket. Again, if you're watching at home or at an establishment waiting for your pancakes, send us those pictures at ProView TV. But I believe we have our next bracket ready, and it is the 3A. So let's see. The first round bye is no surprise. The number 1 seed, St. Michael's. Congratulations to the Horsemen there. The number 4 seed with a bye at the same side of the bracket. That's the Dons of West Las Vegas. The 2 seed at the bottom is Robertson, and then the 3 seed's Cobre. So your byes go to St. Michael's, West Las Vegas, Cobre, and Robertson. Let's look at the opening round. The 8-9 features Theroux and Raton. Interesting matchup there. Nimi and Navajo Prep is the 5-12. Then we look at the bottom. It's Dexter against Hatch Valley. Socorro and Hope Christian is the 7-10 matchup there. Anything stand out at that bracket for you, Aaron?
I mean, we all know where the strong district is in NMA's 3A. It's that St. Michael's, West Las Vegas, Robertson district, and it's no surprise to see all of them kind of at the top. Good to see, for us locally here in Albuquerque, Hope Christian making it there on the 10 seed. I mean, they've got a couple of big play tight ends that they can, or tight end and receiver that can really get things going, but that's going to be a tough round to go against the Warriors in the first one. Always love to watch Socorro when they're playing.
3A is a tough bracket for me to always kind of figure out because, well, traditionally they never play anybody, right? I mean, the strength of schedule for 3A schools is always so bad, with this year being no exception. So you kind of have to look at the few games where they play each other, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about that. So with that being said, looking at the first round, did you see all chalk there? Do you see a potential upset?
I haven't actually had a chance to see a lot of those teams. I don't think, though, I have seen Socorro, Hope Christian. That's the one where I'm kind of keeping my eye. But the Warriors, always a great air attack. Hatch Valley Bears, Dexter. No, I can't see Hatch Valley taking on Dexter either. So I think it goes chalk that way. The big question is going to be those quarterfinals for me.
I will take Raton in that 8-9 matchup. If we go ahead to the quarterfinals, do you like a winner there? What do you like?
I mean, I'm looking at that West Las Vegas game. Obviously coming off that big loss at the end of the season to Robertson, our friend Richard Tripp up there in Las Vegas. I mean, that's a team. The question is, how do they rebound? So not only do you have this big loss at the end of the season, but then you have to wait a week before you can play again. The big question is how they kind of rebound. And I think for the Colts, Nimi, that is a big kind of opening for them because they come off at the end of the season on a big win streak. I mean, they haven't lost since the end of September, end of September. 4 straight victories. I think that Nimi rides in hot, and that's going to be a difficult one for the Dons when it comes into the quarterfinals.
All right, who do you like in the championship?
I mean, the Horsemen are the best. I think last year Cobre played pretty good, so I think that Cobre takes Robertson in that semifinal game, and we get St. Michael's Cobre.
Yeah, I'm with you about Nimi. I think Nimi could pull that upset against West Las Vegas. I'll take Robertson in the title game against St. Michael's.
I mean, we've seen that matchup a few times in the last couple of years. And those are always, I mean, that district tends to put out the best. I mean, every year it's St. Michael's, Robertson. Those guys have been in the championship, so that wouldn't be too surprising to see that.
I think it's always when I see this 3A bracket is when I always say to myself, man, do we have too many classifications?
Yeah, I mean,
right,
they could break it down a little bit.
Because if you put in some top-tier 2A teams, you put in your Unisys, your Texacos in a bracket like that, they hold their own.
Yeah, I don't know if necessarily they could be. Well, I think Eunice probably could be a top 5 team. I don't know if Texaco's cracking the top 5 on this.
But that'll never happen, so it's all circumstance, so forget about that we even mentioned it. But it's fun to think about,
Next time we got to bring out the crystal ball and see if
Right,
maybe the future will kind of bring this together if we just mention it enough.
Again, if you're having a watch party, we'd like to see those pictures at ProView TV. We've already seen the Volcano Vista Hawks. And we've also seen who do we have at the top of the program there?
It was the Grants Pirates.
It was the Grants Pirates
at the Rotary Club.
Forgive me, it is still 7:30 in the morning. All right, let's move ahead to the next bracket. What does our director Jason Pohl have for us? I would imagine it's the 4A bracket, which I have been eagerly anticipating. The thing I love about 4A every year is Lovington's going to get off to that bad start, right?
Yeah,
because they play. Kudos to Lovington for always playing a great
tough
schedule, right?
At the beginning, yeah.
And then they're going to get a really good seed because they play a good schedule, and then you see what happens. But you can take nothing away from the number 1 seed Bloomfield. They have had a dominating season.
Yeah, undefeated so far.
So no surprise that they're the number 1 seed there. The number 2 is the aforementioned Lovington squad there. The Silver Colts at the bottom with them there at the number 3 seed, and then the 4 is Portales. They were riding into the last week of the season undefeated. They did fall in that last week. That's the quarterfinals. Those are the teams receiving the byes. Congratulations. 8-9, it's the Grants Pirates. They were watching earlier. They'll get the Academy Chargers. The 5 seed is the Bernalillo Spartans. Congratulations to the Goon Squad. They'll get the 12 seed Valencia. The 6-11 is Aztec against Taos. Espanola Valley District Champ number 7 against the upstart, young, exciting to watch at times, St. Pius Sartans. What do you like in the opening round there, Aaron?
I mean, obviously, Bernalillo, Coach Cobos has got that team. I mean, a tough defense. They're giving up less than 20 points per game. So Bernalillo's kind of the big spotlight. The question is, second round, for them, you look at Portales, a team that blanked them in the first one. Obviously, the Taos Tigers, kind of a younger squad. Last year, they had those really big guys, and so that's a tough one for them, taking on Aztec, a double Tiger matchup. So that's kind of fun. And St. Pius, that's kind of, to me, the big... St. Pius and Valencia are the kind of surprise teams to make it into the bracket for me because, I mean, just not really strong, but as you kind of talked about, there's not a ton of teams in every classification, so there are going to be teams that aren't as strong in each bracket. I think, the future's bright for both of those teams, but...
With that being said, and I'll have to get a hold of my friend Coach Flakes, but I don't know who's healthy and who's not healthy for St. Pius, but if they have their weapons available for the opening round, one of the best young receivers in the state, in Cale Cox Liggins, Coach Flakes' son, is a phenomenal athlete. The quarterback, Carpenter, 6'5" guy that can throw it down the field.
He can throw lasers.
If all those weapons are available in the opening round, I like them to get through against Espanola Valley in an upset.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen Pius at their best. I've seen them at their worst when they look like a just young, inexperienced team, because that's what they are. When you have freshmen at all the skill positions, it's going to show at times, and it has for Pius.
And first year for Coach Flakes as well.
Right.
I mean, that's why I see them as a bright spot. Maybe next year or the year after that, I see them making a real run. But it's like you say, it's tough when you've got freshmen at every position. You just don't have the experience once it comes to this time of year. Plus, those kids are going to be real tired. They don't have, physically, they're not as developed enough for this time of year.
That's shown with all the injuries, right?
Yeah.
Invaluable experience this year, though, to go to a very hostile crowd in Espanola Valley, see what that's like. I think as freshmen, that's invaluable experience there. All right, moving ahead of the first round, you go into the quarters and beyond. Do you see any upsets? I like Pius if they're healthy. That's the caveat. But do you see any? What do you like the rest of the way?
Well, I think that Grants Academy game, of course, is the really interesting one. Grants tends to play pretty good in the football side, and so the question is then, can they take on Bloomfield? I think Portales gets a little bit of a raw deal on this, getting the 4 seed instead, so that I think they'll play against Bernalillo in that second round. And yeah, they've beaten Bernalillo before, but that's a little tougher game than I think they really should be getting after such a strong year. I don't think that Bernalillo is able to knock them. It's tough to see this. I mean, the Silver Colts, I think, could be one of the sides that's most exposed on this, but they have a little bit of an experience, but they're still strong as well. It's tough to not pick chalk up until the semifinals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you there. Actually, I'm going Bloomfield all the way through to finish an undefeated season, and I think they will do it against Lovington. So I think 1-2 in the championship there. And what a season for Bloomfield. There's no way they don't cap this off with a championship. They've just been dominant.
Yeah, they really have. I think it would have been fun to see them play Portales. Of course, Portales loses in the last week, but I thought Portales was going to be going undefeated as well into the playoffs, and I thought we were going to have a 1-2 battle for that undefeated seed. But, with them dropping it, the question is, can Silver beat Lovington in that semifinals? And, they've got a good run attack in Silver. So I think that it's going to be Bloomfield Silver for the next one, or for the final round. So it's going to be North versus South. Okay. Both on the western side of the state for the championship.
All right, let's move ahead to 5A as the brackets are flying furiously. Again, if you're having a watch party, send them to us at ProView TV. We'd love to have a look. We'd love to give you a shout out on the air. 5A, obviously, it's not going to be any surprise who's at the top there. It's Roswell.
Yep.
The number 1 seed, arguably the best team in the state of New Mexico. They have the first round bye and the 1. The 2 on the opposite side is Artesia, no shock there. Then the 3 is Piedra Vista, and the 4 is Goddard. Those are the byes in the opening round. Congratulations to those teams. The 8-9 matchup features Gadsden and Mayfield. Deming and Belen is the 5-12. Congratulations to the Manzano Monarchs. They're in the field at the 11. They get a crosstown rival, Valley. You hate to see that in the first round, but there it is, 6-11.
I love to see it.
Well,
makes it more fun.
It is fun. It will be fun to watch. But Los Alamos and Highland 7-10. Congratulations to Coach Lobato. Also, what a season that Amiri Mumba has been having at running back for the Hornets. 209 carries, 1,685 yards. You compare that with Charles Lopez Burton, 153 carries, 1,508, almost 10 yards a carry. 2 premier smash mouth bruising running backs in the city of Albuquerque at the bottom of the bracket there. Charles Lopez Burton squats 505 pounds, Aaron. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but I've seen his legs, so I'm not surprised.
That's like Jalen Hurts, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty close to Jalen Hurts. So,
well, you talk about Mumba as well. I saw a video of him the other day where they asked him, are you a little tired this time of year? And he says, yeah, a little bit, but I still like the workload. That's a dude. Both of those dudes are guys who they want to have that ball 20 times a game. Yeah, they're not where, when we get into 6A, we'll be talking about how many times Elijah Gonzalez carries that ball, but those are guys that are going to get that ball a ton of times, and it's really fun to watch them, especially when they can actually go into dudes. They want to find contact. They want to put, you talk about how much he squats. I'd hate to be on the other side of him when he's putting them legs straight into the defenders.
Back to Mumba and Highland for a moment, though. It will be tough to get going in the middle of the field against linebacker Kyler Young
Yeah.
and Jackson Blair. Los Alamos has some nice pieces defensively at that linebacker position. I could see them giving Highland some problems, especially between the tackles. Highland might have to throw the ball around a little bit that game, and that obviously favors Los Alamos.
Well, and you saw that Los Alamos Valley game. I mean, is the offense going to be enough against Highland's defense for Los Alamos?
Yeah, I mean, that game was so different because Valley didn't even complete a pass, right? It was just nothing but Charles Lopez Burton, and still I thought Los Alamos was in that game for most of it, right? And so that's a good ball club, the Hilltoppers there. I think they're going to give Highland all they can handle. I think that's a tough draw for Highland. Manzano, we've seen what Manzano can do when they're really executing well. I think they just draw a really, really tough opening round matchup against Valley.
Yeah.
I really don't give the Monarchs a chance in that ball game. At the top there, obviously the 8-9 is always a coin flip. I like Mayfield there, and then Deming should have no trouble with Belen, in my opinion. What do you?
I agree with you, especially on the latter one. For the Eagles, they do get in, but that's just a tough. I mean, the Eagles have had a tough year all year long. I don't think that this is going to be their year onto it. But when we get to the quarterfinals, moving on to that, assuming Valley beats Manzano, Valley's a team that I think is actually poised to compete against Piedra Vista. Those are two teams that, like you mentioned, they didn't. Valley doesn't actually complete a pass in their game against Los Alamos. Well, Piedra Vista is still a run-forward team for Coach Howell. I mean, that could be a game where they're kind of running the ball down each other's throats. And I think Valley in that quarterfinal game, that's where I would look for an upset in this bracket, is that 6-3 matchup when we get to the quarterfinals.
Oh, I'm with you 100% there. I think Valley could easily upset Piedra Vista. And if you have a weapon like Charles Lopez Burton, very good special teams unit with Garcia, so speedy. They have a lot of speed on the defense. So I like Valley actually to get through to the semis. All right, what do you like here? You can abstain if you want. I'm going to abstain in the game I'm calling.
Yeah, I will abstain.
But at least take us to the semis.
Yeah, well, I'll take you to the championships. I mean, it's tough to pick against Coach Lynn. It's tough to pick against, Coach Maupin down south as well. I think that those two have proven they are the premier teams in 5A football. And I don't think that there's any chance we don't get them in the championship itself. Last year it was Roswell who was in the 2 spot. They get upset by Piedra Vista in that semifinal, and so we got Piedra Vista Artesia for the championship. Well, I don't think Artesia gets upset by either Piedra Vista or Valley or Los Alamos on their side of it. So I think we're going to be having a game, down south. It's going to be Roswell Artesia, but that will be a really fun championship. I mean, they've already played this year. Roswell kind of tooled that game. They were just running it the whole way. Artesia was putting a lot of 4th downs in that game. And so it'll be interesting to see how Coach Maupin adjusts to that. Roswell's quarterback was a little bit more dynamic the first time they played. And we all know Nia Estrada, he's a great athlete. He plays basketball, he plays football. I believe he plays baseball too. We'll see if maybe he gets a little bit more dynamic in a rematch between the two.
You could argue that those are the 2 best teams in the state. Roswell, obviously, number 1 seed, and then Artesia. When you have a resume where you can say, hey, we beat Cleveland and we shut out Lovington, that says a lot about your team. Here's what I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick the championship since I don't have to call this game, right? I think it's going to go down to Roswell and Artesia. At this time, it'll be a much tighter ball game, and Roswell, at the end of the game, is going to trot out the state's best kicker in Peyton Kennard, and he's going to hit a game-winning field goal for the state championship.
It'll definitely be a fun one to watch. I mean, like you say, Artesia's got that record, but those are 2 excellent coaches. You talk about, what they've done with those programs. It's going to be fun either way for that one.
All right, let's move ahead to 6A. Final bracket of the tournament here, which we've been anticipating. The Matadors of Sandia, they did receive the first round bye, so
really,
congratulations to Sandia. They're going to need it because they need to get healthy, and after a fantastic season where they finished at 8-2, they're going to need to get healthy. That's the biggest takeaway there for me anyway. But we'll get to some of these matchups. Congratulations to Cleveland, the number 1. Obviously, no surprise. The 2 is Centennial. The 3 is La Cueva. It's good to see La Cueva and Cleveland on opposite sides. And then Sandia got the 4 over Rio Rancho. Again, the criteria is what it is. I don't think there's anyone that can make a case that Rio Rancho is not a better team than Sandia.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one to make, but at the same time, they'll have that chance.
Right,
So
head to head.
they'll have that chance head to head, I think, is most likely. Obviously, West Mesa, Brody's a great player, and his dad's a great coach, but at the same time, I don't think that they have quite the dynamics that Rio Rancho has. Obviously, we just watched them lose against Cleveland, but against a team that's not Cleveland, Rio Rancho has so many big weapons, so many different ways that they can beat them, and yeah, I think that they'll have that chance. It's Sandia in that 4 spot. I mean, congratulations to them, but that's a tough look for me.
Let's take a look at the matchups. The 8-9 matchup is Hobbs against Clovis. We've seen that before. That's a rematch from opening day where Hobbs just took it to the Wildcats. 41-13 was the final score on opening night, so there's a rematch there. The 5-12 Rio Rancho against West Mesa. So West Mesa last year just misses getting in. This year they do get in. Congratulations, you get the 5-seed Rio Rancho. That's a tough draw for Coach Brody there, that's for sure. And again, with West Mesa being so reliant on a fantastic quarterback in Elijah Brody, if there's a defensive coordinator that can take that away, it's going to be Philip Martinez, right?
Yep.
So if I'm Coach Martinez and that defensive staff, I'm spending all week scheming up a defense to stop one guy. I like their chances, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really tough matchup for West Mesa there. We'll see, though. The 6-11 is Volcano Vista against Farmington. Farmington's really struggled. Trail Griego's struggled with turnovers. So
Well, and what's funny is he has all those turnovers. He's also, I think, the state's leader in yardage as a passer, but you get all this yardage and then you fumble the ball or you throw an interception. And Farmington's got some really strong pieces on defense as well, but we've seen them come down here to Albuquerque a couple of times and lose really clutch moments of the game. So they have the pieces, I think, to compete against Volcano Vista in that. The question is, can they actually finish out the game, which I think has been Farmington's problem all year long is, Trail Griego's turnovers or just the defense folding at the wrong time for them has been just how their season's gone.
the other matchup is the 7 Las Cruces against the number 10 Los Lunas. So Los Lunas almost guaranteed a bye if they wrapped up their district. They lose the district on the road, and really that cost them probably 6 seed lines. They probably went from a 4 all the way down to a 10. Now they have to travel down south to Las Cruces. And more importantly, what did that loss do to the psyche of that team? What did Coach Hennington has to get not only a game plan ready for Las Cruces, but he has to get their mind right.
Yeah, and they are led by a senior quarterback in Kenishiro, but that's, not just you lose the seed lines, but now you actually have to travel. That's the biggest thing that they lose about it. The good news for them is, like we were talking about at the top of the show, does the Clovis victory put them in the 11-12, or does it put them in this 9-10? So it is 9-10. They get Las Cruces instead of having to play against Rio Rancho, but yeah, that's going to be a tough one. Obviously, Bulldogs play really good when they're down at the Field of Dreams. That's a team that loves to play at home, and the Bulldogs fans show up. So,
tell you what, this is a bracket more so than others where maybe the coaches poll really canceled out Max Prep's rankings. Because you look at Max Prep's rankings, Volcano Vista, Las Cruces, Los Lunas, and Hobbs, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They're all ranked higher in Max Preps than Sandia and Rio Rancho, but they all get seated right behind Sandia and Rio Rancho. Mm-hmm. So the coaches poll obviously was drastically different in 6A from the Max Preps rankings, which I'm not saying is the worst thing at times. Now, obviously,
well, it also helps having those records. So
right.
8-2 and 7-3. It doesn't they didn't always win those games against great teams. Both of them play against Cibola, who didn't win a game this year. But at the same time, like you say, that coaches poll is going to be big. But it's both of them come in and they won their district games when they needed to. Both of them come into that 2 spot in their district when they needed to do it.
All right, let's spotlight the top 4 seeds, starting with Sandia. Obviously, we talked a lot about their injuries. We talked a lot about what they can't do. But let's not give them the credit they deserve. They had a great season. I think they're not flashy at anything, Aaron, but they're pretty consistent. They can move the ball on the ground. They can throw it when they need to. Their defense is actually pretty good. Not a flashy good, but a real efficient good. So it's a really balanced football team that's had a nice season.
Yeah, I mean, you say they're not flashy, but sometimes when Cruz Rivera really gets going, he has 3-4 different receivers that he can hit. And, you know, when people start to key up on one of them, all of a sudden they run a hitch and go with Joey, I can't remember his last name, but Joey, and he heads downfield, and all of a sudden you got a big touchdown. I mean, that's what we've seen all year with Sandia is they, you know, Coach Adcox knows how to look around and find a good position for his receivers on that offensive side. And of course, his son's a good receiver for them. They've been able to make really good plays. Yeah, the big question going to be for them, though, health at that running back spot because, you know, their running back did go down, Maldonado, at the end of the season.
So they'll be down to a freshman is what it looks like.
Yeah, so that's going to be the big question. So if it is that freshman, can they still be dynamic in the passing game and in the rushing game?
Right.
And that's going to be difficult.
The number 3 seed to spotlight there is the La Cueva Bears. Obviously, they had a forfeit early in the season that added to their loss column. Where in a game where maybe that they shouldn't have lost there, so they come in at the number 3. Obviously, there's a lot to like about that team. They've just been beating the you-know-what out of teams. Mason Posa is worth the price of a ticket.
Oh yeah.
On his side, Nick Mertz. That's a really nice, and much like Cleveland with Schufeld and Medrano, Posa and Mertz in the middle there. They have a lot of offensive weapons. -1, Kobe McGill no longer with the team. So I think that'll hurt actually in the playoffs. That's my opinion. But some guys are going to have to step up. Obviously, Cam Dyer's had a nice season at quarterback. Got to cut back.
An excellent season.
Got to cut back on the turnovers.
Yep.
That's going to be his focus in the postseason is keeping that clean. But, there's a lot to like about the La Cueva Bears.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, Mason Posa's worth the price of admission. Every week, if you watch a La Cueva game, Mason Posa's forcing a fumble, or he's getting an interception, or he's making a huge sack on 3rd down. Every time that they need something big, it's always Mason Posa. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen him get pick sixes, or, I mean, they even had him returning punts earlier this season. So he's fantastic to watch. I mean, I don't really think that the forfeit necessarily hurt La Cueva. The big question for them, I mean, they lost to Centennial, they lost to Cleveland. So they were going to be in that 3 seed either way because those other 2 teams had that better part. But I think with Dyer being as dynamic as he is offensively, La Cueva could absolutely find themselves back in the championship again.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to take anything away from Centennial. That matchup was earlier in the season. La Cueva is a team that practices in the morning. And so earlier in the season, they go to the Field of Dreams.
So they're already awake now?
Yeah, they would be awake at this time. This is normal for them. No bloodshot eyes for them, right? But that's a team, my point was going to be, that's a team that I don't think they're, and I heard some rumblings that heat, over 100 degrees on the turf at the Field of Dreams, they weren't quite ready for that, especially practicing early in the morning. Heat's not going to be an issue when those 2 teams see each other again. Speaking of those 2 teams, Centennial, the number 2 seed, what a season again for Aaron Ocampo and his Hawks.
Oh, yeah.
Again, a lot to like there. They got a lot of weapons offensively, and a lot of guys that, maybe you haven't seen play before, but they have a nice receiving core. They can run the ball. They're good at the point of attack. A lot to like about Centennial.
Yeah, and so the question is going to be, so they beat Las Cruces earlier in the season, and if we're assuming that Los Lunas doesn't get that win over Las Cruces, how's Centennial going to match up when they take on Las Cruces? I mean, I think they're really well poised to push themselves into the semifinals for that.
And then, finally, let's spotlight the number 1 team, the Cleveland Storm. Congratulations to head coach Robert Garza on another fantastic season there. They are the standard. There's no doubt about it. 7-3. Their only in-state loss to Artesia. Obviously, we could talk forever and ever about Strat Schufelt and Medrano. And so many guys joined that discussion, especially on the defensive end. Chuka Tutman, who was phenomenal against Rio Rancho. Offensively, a lot to like there as well. Talk about their offense. I'll let you talk about their offense.
The big thing for me is that offensive line. So we saw it especially against Rio Rancho. They've got some big boys up front. I mean, they clear the path away, and then you got Mboeha running that ball. I mean, when he's got those holes, he hits them really quick, and then he can start booking it down the field. It makes it so difficult for teams. And, whether they get Hobbs or Clovis, you're talking about taking on an offense that can put up 30, 40, 50 points easily every night. They are just very, very dynamic in that. I mean, the quarterback is going to be the big question for me, right? That's their big question walking in this year, is that they move on from.
See, and I don't think so. I see that's where I have a different opinion, and I agree. I mean, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you, Aaron, because all season everyone's tried to convince me that that's their weak spot. He's a sophomore, right? But I've watched him enough this season to like what I see. He throws a nice ball, especially his deep ball. He's got some receivers that can go get it. Jaden Davis can catch almost everything. So I think maybe. Yeah, okay, there's a big shoes to fill there at that position always, right? Whether it be a Wysong or a Davidson. But I don't think Jordan Hatch gets the credit that he deserves, and I don't think that's a weak spot for Cleveland. I really don't, especially behind that offensive line like you mentioned.
I think really it's that offensive line that's setting it up, because if
Right.
we don't see him under pressure that often.
No.
In every game that I've watched of Cleveland's, clean pockets every time. I mean, not to mention the fact that you have Weha running that ball. So the rushers are not getting up there as quick because they're afraid that if you get upfield too quick, Cleveland's got a guy that's going to burn you straight down the field. So it helps. I mean, like you say, he hasn't been terrible this year, but the question is when it becomes...
No, I didn't say that. I think he's much better than not terrible.
Well, sorry. What I meant to say is if we get into a situation in the championship game like we did last year where it becomes that big shootout between them and LeQuave or Centennial or whoever, can he sit there and throw the ball 40 times?
Absolutely. In a shootout with Cam Dyer and Hatch, I would be comfortable with either quarterback.
All right.
Absolutely. He's convinced me. I don't think – I know that was the narrative there early in the season, is that he's young, that he's a sophomore. But you know what? I think he could – I don't think we're going to get a shootout again, to be honest with you. But I would be very comfortable with him at the helm if there was a shootout, as I would be with Cam Dyer.
So let's take a look back at the brackets and talk about who's going to be in that championship game.
Right, absolutely. Let's take a look. First round. Let's take a look at the first rounds. We'll go through. I'm going to abstain from picking a championship this year because that didn't go well for me last year.
Wait, it went bad for you last year, Sebastian?
It did.
Wait, what happened again?
Right, it did. It was,
what happened again?
Well, it went a little crazy. Let's go back to the 6A. We'll do the 6A, Jay, and then we'll wrap things up. But first round, Hobbs Clovis rematch. What do you like?
Hobbs.
I'm with you there 100%. Nice little win at the end of the season for Clovis. Reality hits them pretty hard, I think, in that opening
Yeah, I
round.
mean, just to make the playoffs, I think is a big deal for the Wildcats.
Absolutely. Rio Rancho, West Mesa, 5-12 matchup at the Double R. What do you like there?
We've already talked about this one. I think Rio Rancho is really, really dynamic. The team that they have struggled against is Cleveland, but against every other team that we've seen Rio Rancho play, their offense has so many big weapons, and I like Rio Rancho.
Yeah, I think that defense is going to make it real tough on West Mesa. I like the Rams there. 6-11, Volcano Vista against Farmington. What do you like?
It's hard not to pick the Hawks. I mean, Elijah Gonzalez is fantastic. I think Hansen's really coming along as the season goes as well at the quarterback position. But when you got the A-Train on the team, I mean, and that offensive line, we talked about the Cleveland offensive line. Well, Volcano's offensive line gets up there and makes those blocks a lot. So it's tough to pick against them. If Trell Griego can have a really clean game, though, if he can put up the sort of yardage he puts and the way that he runs the ball, Farmington could threaten. I just think it's tough to pick against Volcano.
All right, 7-12, or 7-10, excuse me, is Las Cruces against Las Lunas. What do you like there?
I mean, my heart, as somebody in the metro area, wants to pick Las Lunas, but the Bulldogs are every year a team that's going to push themselves into the quarterfinals.
Can't pick against Coach Oh, by the way, I agree with you on Volcano Vista. I think they just roll over Farmington in that opening round. Las Lunas, I think Coach Hennington is going to have those guys refocused. Can't pick against Coach Hennington there. I think they'll go on the road for the opening round.
Yeah, that's the only place I see an upset really possible. I mean, Farmington, like I said, if they can have a really mistake-free game, but Las Lunas, the Tigers, really good team, but they lost at the end of the season, and is that going to mess with their heads a little bit?
So then that gives us Cleveland and Hobbs in the quarterfinals. What do you like there?
Cleveland.
That'll give us Sandia and Rio Rancho in the 4-5.
That's a tough one. I think for Sandia, the question is what their running back position's looking like, but that does give them a little bit more favorable of a situation, because if it becomes a shootout, Cruz Rivera and company can throw against Rio Rancho, but I just can't see Sandia taking that one.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I think Cleveland will have an easy time against Hobbs. I think Rio Rancho will dispose of Sandia pretty easily. I don't think either of those games are close in the quarters. Bottom of the bracket, La Cueva against Volcano Vista. We've seen that matchup before.
We have.
What do you like there?
I mean, the big man in the middle for the Bears. For Volcano Vista, the question is going to be, how do you get Elijah Gonzalez away from Mason Posa? How do you get him away from those middle guys for La Cueva? If Volcano can crack that code, I mean, the A train rolls down the station every time. It's tough, though, because La Cueva, they have a team that's really built to fight against that Volcano side. We saw it on the My 50 game. I mean,
I was going to say,
we saw it.
We've seen this movie before. La Cueva has their number. It's as simple as that. I mean, Volcano has just had some struggles against La Cueva. I think the Bears really have Volcano's number.
They're built perfectly to combat what Volcano Vista brings. They've got the guys up in that front seven. You know, Volcano's really strong up front. La Cueva's even stronger up front.
So, yeah, I like La Cueva over Volcano there. Final matchup then, Centennial against, you have them against Las Cruces. I have them against Las Lunas. What do you like there?
Hawks on that. Although, you know, if the Tigers do push their way into the quarterfinals, I wouldn't be surprised if they had to go down south twice in a row. You get fired up, you win one time at the Field of Dreams, you win again. But I think Las Cruces Centennial will get the rematch, and then Centennial wins again over the Bulldogs.
All right, so then that takes us to we go Cleveland against Rio Rancho. I'm going to pick to the semis. I'll let you pick all the way through.
Yeah.
So Cleveland against Rio Rancho in a rematch. It was pretty bad to end the season. I think.
Yeah.
And
Shutout.
And that's what it's scary to think. But the difference between number 1 and number 5, for it to be that drastic, Cleveland showed you the difference between them and the 5th best team in the state. That's tough. Yeah. I have Cleveland in that one.
Yeah, easily. I mean, they shut out Rio Rancho. I don't think Rio Rancho gets shut out in a semifinal game. I do think that they're able to put up some points in the second time through, and you know, coaches will get them ready to do it. It's just I don't think they can really get through their in-city rival in Cleveland.
Rematch between La Cueva and Centennial, the 3 and the 2. What do you like there?
I like Cam Dyer. I mean, he's been impressive all year. He had big shoes to fill, and Dyer's shown he's got them. And every year, Coach Back takes that team to the semifinals, and he seems to be able to beat Centennial every single time.
Yeah, I don't think travel would be an issue there at all. Nope. I agree with you. Cam Dyer just provides so many matchup nightmares for Centennial. There's so much you have. And when you have so many offensive weapons, Cheeto Lumbrera has been so good, especially second half of the season, as his touches have increased, so has his production. So much to game plan and scheme for, and then Cam can just tear you apart when you're concentrating on so many offensive weapons.
I mean, the fact that you have to pay attention so much with him, and we saw, you know, Atrisco was attempting to do the same thing this year by putting Latavius Murray at quarterback. But what Dyer brings is he can also throw the ball really, really well, so he can pick you apart if he has to stay in the backfield. But at the same time, the second he starts heading up the field, he's a guy who can put up, 7-8 touchdowns in that one game?
So here we are, after a long, lengthy season of lots of games of the week.
Do we have any mascots around?
No mascots. Lots of oh boy. Oh, Jason, why would you do that to me? So this is what happened last year on the Bracket Show. This is why I will not be picking a winner. But here we go. We have a long season finally complete. And wouldn't you know, we both think it's going to be a rematch of La Cueva and Cleveland. I am going to be the responsible one this year and abstain from picking a winner, although I do have some strong thoughts on it. So when the cameras go off, I'll tell you who I think is going to win.
Yeah.
But
I mean, last year I picked correctly. I picked the Cleveland Storm.
I don't remember that.
I did say it. I said it quickly while you were putting on that. What were you wearing? A bear mascot?
Yeah. I don't.
And I think again, Cleveland just comes out there just way too strong of a team. That just the front seven for them on defense and the front line for them on offense makes them everybody's nightmare. They've got the biggest dudes up front, and in football, what matters most is who's got the biggest dudes up front, whether it's at the NFL, whether it's Alabama in college or Georgia in college, whoever. The teams that have the biggest dudes up front tend to win, and I think Cleveland's got that for that reason.
Jason, get rid of that. People will think I'm redoing that pick
Yeah, that
again,
looks terrible
right?
on me, too.
So, one thing to mention there quickly about Cleveland, which I think is what makes them so special, is they don't have a weakness at any level of the defense, right?
No.
We talked about the middle with Schufelt and Medrano. We talked about the front. Their secondary is also very good, right? So I remember Coach Bramante from the Gladiators telling me that's how you build a great defense, is if you can have a dominant player at each level, that's pretty unstoppable. So defensively, they check all the boxes. Offensively, I've told you how highly I think of their young quarterback, so I don't think that's a weakness there. Running back, I think obviously Harris.
Boyha's fantastic. Whether or not he likes mac and cheese or not,
He
doesn't
hates
matter.
mac and cheese and
Does
gravy.
not matter.
Right. They have some weapons at the receiver, especially Davis, right? So they check all those boxes. LaCueva on the other side, so similar defensively, right? In the middle there with Posa. And it's funny because you look at Posa and Schufelt, probably the two best players in the state of New Mexico, yet they do things so differently, right?
Oh, yeah.
They do things totally different. And Schufelt kind of just dominates that area in the middle. Posa can come from anywhere. See, look, we got the Jason's just ready.
It's just a still
He's
waiting
ready
down
to
there.
bait me again, but I'm not making a pick, Jason, this year. So I'm not making a pick, right? So, but anyway, back to what I was saying. So very similar at that spot, right? At the front, I think they get a little more pressure from Schufelt than their front on the other side were Cleveland. The secondary is pretty good there at LaCueva as well, right? So, I mean, defensively, those teams mirror pretty well. Offensively, same thing, right? They have weapons at every level. There's no way it's a shootout again, right?
Well, I'll probably be down south, so I'm not too worried about it. But I think we end up with a much more defensive game this time around, because right now those two defenses look excellent.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no way 2 years in a row that could possibly happen.
I mean, you say that now, and come the weekend of Thanksgiving, you're going to be sitting there watching another 70 to 82 game or something along those lines.
Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind that, right? That's a fun game to broadcast, but I really don't see that happening. All right, if you'd like to pick a winner in that game, I'm not, but if you'd like to pick a winner,
Storm.
Storm. Okay.
Storm.
So you'll take the Cleveland Storm.
Yeah. What would that be? 3-4 in a row?
Who knows, right?
I don't count the 2020 season, even if you see that on some things that they were the champions. But otherwise, it'd be 4 in a row.
That is arguably probably their strongest team, though, right?
Yeah,
that
but we
team.
didn't have a championship.
All right.
Unfortunately.
I mean, the tradition there that has been built is obviously very, very impressive.
Like unstoppable. It would be really interesting to see a team that could compete with them and like shut this down. But right now, that's a train that you cannot stop. It's going full speed down the tracks, and if you get in the way, they're just going to knock you straight over.
And I think what speaks to what they've built, what Coach Potter started, what Coach Ridenhour cemented, and what Coach Garza is now carrying on, is that when they lose a game, everything stops in Rio Grande. It's like, what's wrong with the Storm? Oh my God, I can't believe it. They lost the game, right? Like, that's the...
Oh, yeah, like when Artesia beat them this year, everybody's like, oh, is Cleveland are they no longer good? Like, what's happening? But, I mean, like I think you're about to say, what they've built as a team.
Right.
They continue along every time.
And the crazy thing about Cleveland, and I'm just waiting for it this year, I talked with Harris and Boyha about this a little bit. He'll be my guest on Local Focus with Sebastian Noel, Aaron.
Oh, will he?
Yeah, you can catch that Monday nights at 10. But what I talked to him about was they always seem to have in the playoffs, either someone comes out or gets hurt or whatever, and then here's this guy that steps in, and the star's born, just like that. We saw it when Chuka Tuteman had to take over at running back. Mm-hmm. He had a great run at running back. And so I talked with Harris about that a little bit, and he said, hey, look, Coach Garza talks about that. He said, hey, every single one of you is one play away from being the dude. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, I don't know how they always do it, but in the playoffs, they got a guy that just becomes the dude.
Oh, yeah, he becomes the star, and, he's the guy that ends up getting interviewed at the end of the state championship, too. When you're looking, right now we're talking about Schufelt and Medrano and whoever else, and then all of a sudden somebody's going to come in, have a big 3-pick game, or, they'll catch 4 touchdowns, and we're not talking about them right now. That seems to be the recipe for success, but Cleveland's one of the biggest schools in the state, and they have one of the biggest teams. They have so much talent at that level. They get very good talent on their football team every time so that, they don't have to rebuild ever. They always have another great talent coming in next. And yeah, maybe he's a sophomore now, but those guys always are strong.
Well, and I think you can see why they're so good. You saw it. I think you're going to see it today, and you saw it yesterday, and that's Yaffle Super Bowls are happening right now.
Oh, yeah.
And at the younger levels, it's a machine, and it keeps churning, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, similar to what we used to see with La Cueva we still see them do that with La Cueva, but when we were still doing those games, you would see La Cueva in the sophomore championship and the freshman championship, and they'd be in the varsity championship. There'd be one or two that a La Cueva team wasn't in, but La Cueva, Volcano Vista is also the same way at that Yaffle level. You just see so many of their teams being in that championship.
All right, since we have a little bit of time left, okay, let's revisit this too many teams. Too many classifications, right?
All right.
So let's just
So who do you move around though?
No, let's just say 5A is the highest classification, right? So all your 6A is lumped in there, and the benefits would be not only during the playoffs, you actually get some competitive games in the opening round, which we won't, but also scheduling, right? There's not that stigma of we can't schedule down, right? If everyone was together in a big 5A. Right. Look, I mean, yes, Cleveland would still be at the top. La Cueva, Centennial.
I think one thing that would be
an
advantage.
Roswell.
I would say that I want to see Roswell play against Cleveland. I want to see Roswell play against La Cueva. I mean, we have been able to watch Artesia play against Cleveland.
Right.
And the thing that folks down south always say is, we're the best team in the state. Well, Artesia came out and they beat Cleveland. They showed that. So that would be fun having that big joint.
If that was joined, bless their hearts, but you need a 1-8 playoff team.
Out of Berlin. I mean, my question is, so Berlin, do they then have to come in and play against, Las Cruces the way we've seen that, some of those teams in the 5A, current 5A, we've watched Berlin play against Los Lunas, and it really hasn't been competitive for the last 2 years.
But essentially, that largest classification could be a classification of about 25 to 30 teams. And no, you're not. I mean, obviously, a team like that's never going to schedule up and schedule a Cleveland, right? But the point is, if there was a larger pool there, I think you get a pretty nice looking playoff bracket. And I think it would help for scheduling. I know that's something. I know James Yotis, who's just the king of all preps, right? He tweeted out about that earlier. That's something that the Activities Association is looking at. Is possibly expanding districts to make scheduling easier. Where if you have giant 8-team districts, then you only have to go out and find 2 games plus your big district, right? So changes are a-coming. So, we just want to put in our opinion for what it's worth, right?
Well, see, I just find it's just difficult for me because I know even like Los Lunas has that trouble finding somebody to play against. And even if you bring together 5 and 6A, and maybe bring together some of the teams from 5A, put them with some of the 4A teams. I don't know that really solves Los Lunas' problem unless we do something along what, NMA has been talking about with that giant districts. But then at that point, the question is, are we going to have, 5 or 6 at-large teams? I think a lot of people are going to start rumbling about, this is rigged. My team didn't get in. Well,
those
coaches' polls
happen, right?
Well, that's true.
Northern bias, yada yada yada. I think here's the combination that would make everything right. I think you combine the 6A and 5A for the most part, and then the caveat there being is the third high school being built out in Rio Rancho, right?
Yeah.
So the powerhouse Cleveland maybe comes a little bit back towards the pack if the third school is opened. You're just kind of, you got a nice 30 teams there because let's just say there is that third high school.
I would like to see 2 and 3A as well.
Absolutely,
a lot of those teams
100%.
need to be together.
Yep, 100%. Because Roswell, Artesia, those teams, they can compete with these other teams.
I think those two, absolutely. It would be interesting to see how Piedra Vista, we've seen them play some of the 6A teams, but it'd be interesting to see how a lot of those top teams compete.
But, we don't have a seat at that table. We just have opinions like everyone else.
We only sit at this table.
We only sit at this table, that's right. And there's a little piece of cardboard holding this table up. So that's the difference between tables. Aaron, hey, thanks for waking up in the morning, man.
If you call it waking up.
Right? Oh yeah, stumbling in. Whatever you call it. The brackets are here. Again, nmact.org. Throughout the weekend and into next week, they'll start populating kickoff times. We thank you for joining us. I want to thank Jason Pohl behind the glass. He's our director. Steve Davis, president of ProView Networks. We've been doing this bracket show for quite a long time, and we did not